welcome to Movie RX, where I prescribe entertainment one movie at a time. I am your host, Dr. Benjamin, PhD. What does the PhD stand for? Posers. Ha! Dude.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just the one I picked for today. I had to.
It's very topical.
Right. So today, my guest and I haunted the hallways of the same high school at the same time. Some call him Terrence. I call him Terry. Welcome, Terry.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Good, because today is another late 90s gem. This film, I feel like, is often overlooked. As a matter of fact, I overlooked it until I didn't. And
yeah, I was kind of the same way.
And then it mattered when I happened to catch it. So today we're talking about SLC Punk. Some basic movie info for SLC Punk. It was filmed on location in Salt Lake City.
Manhattan.
In Manhattan. Salt Lake City, Utah. Filmed on location and released in 1998. Directed by James Marandino, who didn't really do a whole lot else. He did do another SLC Punk movie.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I was like, wait, there was a sequel?
It was totally a cash grab.
Yeah, it was 2016.
Yeah, let's not. Punk in 2016 is different than it was, in the 80s. It's different than it was in the 90s, because I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot of punk going on right now. Is that?
I think there's always, it's just like everything. There's always going to be some iteration of it.
Well, yeah. As long as there's people who don't want to be hicks, right?
Right.
Because
that is the moral of the story. Don't be a hick.
Don't be a hick. So this movie stars, I don't know. Some people really don't dig this dude, but Matthew Lillard to me is a hero.
Yeah, he's one of the best. He is this movie, in my opinion. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. He's kind of essential to the personality that this movie has. I don't know that I would have enjoyed this movie quite as much if it were anybody else, but there was some really good.
Would have been an interesting pick.
I don't think so. in the Army now, good.
Yeah.
SLC Punk, not so much. And it also starred Michael Goorjian, which he hasn't really done a whole hell of a lot either. But I liked him in this one. That was Heroin Bob, by the way. And then the IMDb description for this movie is, in the early 1980s, Steve-O and Heroin Bob are the only two dedicated punks in conservative Salt Lake City.
Well, obviously not, but they're going to parties with all these other punks. But okay,
right. And
it's IMDb.
I think that they're kind of talking about like towards the end of their story, because that's when he starts talking about how well, these guys aren't punk and these guys aren't really punk, but they're who we hang out with because we don't really have a better choice,
Yeah,
but
you got a good point there.
Yeah.
It almost becomes that the no true Scotsman fallacy kind of thing,
Fair. This is the section of the show that I call the initial movie impression. I tend to like to stay away from the deep stuff in this part. I like to talk about a lot of technical stuff and stuff like that. Gotcha. But the cinematography in this movie was kind of textbook, and there isn't really anything to say about that. But as far as that kind of like the viewing experience for this movie was fun. The outrageous personalities, especially from Matthew Lillard. They may have covered up some poor acting, but I guess we'll never know because most of the rest of the people in this movie you don't really see much of in other movies or anything. But really, I think the thing that stood out to me the most as far as technically with this movie goes is that the art of the fourth wall from Ferris Bueller was perfected in this movie.
Yeah.
Because Ferris Bueller did it in a very classic way that, it was kind of the original, movie that people think about as far as doing that kind of stuff. But this one added something to it. It's almost like Ferris Bueller with attitude. you know.
Yeah, and a lot of that fourth wall breaking. I mean, at one point he gives you an entire essay. He interrupts the movie and is speaking directly to you and gives you an essay on violence. Like, it's actually pretty well thought out. Even it's really well done.
Right. I mean, I just can't complain about any of the technical stuffs with this movie. I mean, transitions, none of them really stood out too much to me.
I
mean,
guess I kind of have one, but it really makes it feel, it's not really a problem other than maybe a technical point of view, is it kind of breaks that whole Chekhov's gun, is because one of the characters, Mark, basically goes nowhere. I mean, the story just fizzles out, but that is part of the story because
That's
it's just
why.
meant to be real life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes that the movie feel less like a movie.
that's actually a really good leading into the next section. The characters, Mark is only in the movie for so long, and
Yeah.
he's only in there. He's only got so many minutes of screen time.
But yet he's still a very memorable character.
He's super memorable, and he's super mysterious. Like, because, you know, there's that whole story where, you know, his family was killed in an airplane crash and he was the only one who survived, and all of that stuff. But with all of that stuff, you still don't know whether any of that is really true. You know, if he's independently wealthy because of, you know, suing the airlines from that crash, or if he's wealthy because he sells a lot of weed, or, you know, I mean,
obviously
you don't
has
really
drug
know.
connections.
Yeah. So like, what is it about this guy, and why did he show up? And, you know, he didn't really say anything about, you know, being gone forever. You know,
yeah.
and,
Well, he even says that he was just going down to Florida for a couple of weeks. He'd be right back. You know.
yeah, and then they're talking about how they're not so sure that, you know, that it almost became an urban legend. Some say that his plane crashed and he died like he was supposed to so many years before. You know, like, yeah. So Mark, I really loved his character, but I think it's because I really love the actor.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that guy. I know I've seen him in other stuff, but he's one of those actors that I recognize him whenever I see him, but I can never remember him from where.
my favorite is Inglourious Bastards.
Oh,
He was the Nazi killing Nazi.
Oh yeah, Stilker, or yeah, the one that
Yeah, he was the
shoves his whole fist into a Nazi officer's mouth and breaks his jaw. Yeah,
I really like Mark. He's a good character, and
he's
he
got
adds some
such
flavor.
intensity.
Yeah,
You know, he's such an intense actor when he's in those scenes, and like when he snaps on Bob. You know, did you take my shit?
Yep.
You know, it's like, oh my God, he comes alive with so much energy. But Matthew Lillard too, but in more of a chaotic, you know, youthful energy. This is, you know, with Mark, it is absolute seriousness. You know.
Now, the next one I kind of want to talk about is Mike. And I don't know who all of my listeners in the Omaha area are, but if one of them happens to be Sean, Mike always reminds me of Sean. Do you see that?
Who's Mike?
Mike was the one with, he was the clean cut one with the glasses that,
Oh yeah,
super tall, you know, and he
was supposed to be much younger than them too.
Yeah, he
always
18
looked like the
when they're post college.
yeah.
Yeah.
So 24 presumably.
Mike to me is Sean.
Yeah, I totally
Sean
get that.
with anger issues. Like, I mean, essentially. So I mean, it's almost like I almost feel like I know this guy. But
There's a couple of characters like that I feel like.
right. I mean, I guess I could say that I used to know somebody that was kind of like Trish, you know. The only thing that I can really say about Trish is that she is out there. You know, the, like, not quite hippie, but not quite pagan, but not quite, I mean, all of those things just mixed into one. And honestly, like, as far as the big characters on this list, I feel like that Trish is probably the least interesting to me.
Yeah. She starts out kind of well, she starts out and she's kind of interesting because she's just so out there. She kind of seems like a modern hippie, and those kinds of people are always usually very interesting to listen to. You kind of understand why Heroin Bob is so you know, captivated by her, but the more you listen to her, the more like that scene in the party where she's kind of gushing on Bob and whatnot. It just sounds so lame now. I mean, maybe it sounded better.
is what it
Yeah,
is. You're hearing the cliche out of all of that group of people, I guess you could say, did.
You are God and I am an ant looking at a human being,
Oh,
anticipating
God.
being crushed. That's just, oh my God, lady.
Like, dude,
you're
shut up.
doing too much. Just too much.
So, okay, so now that we got, a few of the interesting and kind of interesting characters out of the way, now we really get down to the meat, and that is the dynamic duo that is Steve-O and Heroin Bob. And really, I have them separately on here, on my list here, but I don't feel like that's fair, because these two kind of play off of each other so much. Like, you don't find one without the other very often, and where one lacks, the other comes in. And you can't have a stage battle, beating the shit out of a bouncer or anything without the other. Like, if you've got Steve-O on the stage beating somebody up, then Heroin Bob is right behind him.
And then just behind him comes Mike.
And then Mike after that.
Yeah. But Steve-O and Heroin Bob are the legitimately just like blood brothers. I mean,
right. And as far as the Heroin Bob thing, I love how that's ironic.
Yeah. And it's the best name I've ever heard of a character in any movie. I don't think you can top Heroin Bob.
Yeah. It's as far as nicknames go, Heroin Bob. I don't know. It makes you want to know more about the character, and
absolutely,
and we'll get to that too, because you do find out quite a bit about him later. But Steve-O, Steve-O is a rich kid that is,
and that's one thing that kind of bugged me rewatching this back through, because I remember that it was like, even in the beginning, it kind of feels a bit like he's a bit of a poser,
a little bit. Only because that he is coming from.
He had two parents. He
had two parents, but his dad made tons of money. His dad was a corporate lawyer.
Right.
And all this other stuff. So you're like, wow, that's
where I was getting at. Is like, it almost feels like he's a bit being recalcitrant child. He's also 18. He's got a lot of stuff going on. His parents broke up. He's hurting in a lot of ways, and he's using the punk rebellion. It's useful to him.
And that kind of brings us into one of our points of interest to talk about. There's the whole thing with the punk movement, and he points it out a few times, is that the punk movement is not how you dress, because that's what makes you a poser, right?
Right.
Posers.
That's just fashion.
Posers were punk for fashion. He came from a family with wealth, but he didn't just wear the clothes, and he didn't recite the lyrics. He complained about talking about, hating when posers would say anarchy in the UK.
Oh yeah.
Saying, what the fuck good is anarchy in the UK to someone in Utah?
Right.
And
very practical.
It makes sense,
right.
So he's not stupid, which to me,
and I think that's
what would be required for a poser, as far as I'm concerned, is somebody who's unintelligent and doesn't think about why they're doing what it is.
Yeah. They're just
doing it because, the music is a big part of it, except in this movie. Because he has that little talk about the music and its influence on the punk culture and all of that stuff.
I like that though. Is his whole message there is just
right.
It doesn't matter who started it.
Yeah,
it matters where it's going, what it does for you.
Aside from an occasional punk song playing in the background, the focus, the music was nowhere near the focus for this movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like that a lot of people would, most of the time, if you say punk, that is what they think about, is they think about their favorite punk bands. They think about their favorite punk band lyrics. They think about their favorite punk band singers and all of that stuff. And this had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. And he almost goes out of his way to make sure that it is, not about the music. It's more about the culture than just the music. The music is one aspect of it, but it's more about this punk scene, as he says.
It seems like it's pretty big because they do have parties with punk bands, right, and a lot of people bashing around and moshing and all of that stuff. But you start to see, as the movie goes, you start to see that there are fewer actual punks. The people that they're partying with. It started out that in the first party they showed that Steve-O was walking around and the only mod, the modern mob guys, the only mod that you had seen at the party was that one kid that was kind of an ambassador.
The ambassador, yeah, I was just gonna say,
and
he's
he
cool.
was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the movie goes, you start seeing more mods and more of the posers and all of that. I mean, you see more of those other groups. About the only one that you don't see are the rednecks, the cowboy kids. But
they show up at that one scene and break up the party. They get their revenge.
Yeah, but I mean that's just fun. I mean, I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the punk culture is that fighting is a necessity because it's necessary for having fun. And I mean, I can't really say that I relate because I'll tell you what, I have been punched before and I didn't like it. So I would make a shitty punk.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is just a really fun idea. Like, did you ever friend fight?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I had 4 brothers.
Oh shit. So, you had 4 brothers. You did plenty of friend fighting.
Oh yeah, we did. Well, and some not so friendly, but plenty of fighting growing up. So this movie, the violence aspect of it was really energizing to me. Is like that. I feel like watching it back as an adult, it hits a little bit differently because the violence, you're so energized by it and it's so much fun. But you look at it now and you're just like, God, that would hurt.
Right? No, I'm too old. Like,
yeah, well.
Forget that. The violent stuff, I don't know, I think is fun. I like violent movies.
Well, yeah. It's not that the violence is necessarily good or anything, but it is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, that's and it adds something.
Oh, for sure. And it is part of that culture,
Yeah, if fighting on multiple levels. I mean, physically fighting with the people around you that you don't like is I mean, or that don't like you. I guess both apply. But also fighting against the system, fighting against the government,
obviously the rednecks,
fighting against expectations and things like that. And that kind of brings in the point of interest that you had put on, the finding oneself aspect.
Yeah.
Of all
I really
of it.
feel like, Steve-O is struggling with that this whole movie through. I mean, and you kind of get this, flashback closer to the end of the movie, where it shows Steve-O and Heroin Bob as kids, and you find out that Steve-O was always the straight-laced one. He was a nerd. He was just in the basement playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
And Bob was the one that brought him into the punk scene, and really woke it up inside of him. But it wasn't him that was pushing towards the punk. He just wanted friends to fit in. He just he was trying to find out who he was.
Kind of the cool thing with the whole, spending so much time throughout the movie finding himself is that I don't think he actually finds himself until the end. I mean, I guess in some, warm and fuzzy way, I guess that's kind of true for all of us, but except for the fact that most of us learn, especially like, I turned 40, a couple weeks ago. So I started to figure out that I never stop finding myself, I continue to find new things about myself every year. And so that, I mean, and I think that that's something that Steve-O was kind of doing was it felt like he was trying to find the who he's going to be forever. And that's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so many of us struggle with that, especially when we're younger. We get this idea that we're supposed to set up our entire lives. You're supposed to have a plan and get to it, and obviously
societal That's a societal thing. Like we get
Yeah, it's a
pressured by
pressure.
teachers, by parents, by, by aunts and uncles and grandparents and all of that, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, they want you to write your whole life out
Mhm.
and know who you are before you even graduate high school. Like your brain isn't done developing then. Like, so how can
And
you know?
honestly, I mean, if he went into college immediately after graduating, his brain may not even be developed right now. I mean, I think they said it's like 25 or 26 by the time your brain is fully developed. That was one of my teachers in high school always recommended that we not get married until we're at least 25, so that your brain is fully developed and you're making a proper decision.
My dad always called it growing a brain.
That makes sense.
He'd say,
That's good.
like he'd find something like after I moved out or whatever, and he'd give it to my sister and be like, "Here, you hold on to this for your brother until he grows a brain." And it wasn't because
dad
my
energy.
dad, well, my dad's just kind of badass. But he like, I mean, he wasn't literally saying that, I was too stupid to have those nice things, but I mean, there comes a level of maturity with age that is impossible before that point, So yeah, I totally get it. But people expecting so many definitive things to be answered before your brain is done developing is ridiculous. And I think that's part of why the punk scene came forward.
Yeah, is because these people were in desperate search of a meaning. They needed something to fit into. They didn't fit in with the jocks. They didn't fit in with the rednecks, or they just didn't want to. Either way, I mean, that's not their scene. These are the people that didn't have a group, so they fell into the group that was left open to them. Right. I mean, at least in Steve-O, that's really what it looks like. Is Steve-O and them, they were the guys, they were the losers, quote unquote. But I mean, a lot of the guys that would have been called losers then are usually called boss today. But
right, the D&D nerds.
But that doesn't make it any easier to deal with when you're in high school. I mean,
yeah, all those cool kids from high school have all traded in their whatever was cool back when we were in. What kind of shit was cool when we were in high school? I don't even.
Baggy pants.
Well, I mean, that was for cool people. Like I'm talking like the, like the rich kids and all of that. Like what was popular when we were in high school? I can't really. Gigapets were before us.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. There was a thing when we were in high school that kind of came back into vogue was Beanie Babies. That was the weird thing.
Oh yeah.
I remember that for like a minute. People were crazy about Beanie Babies again. And I was just like, wait, wasn't that our parents' thing to go crazy over?
Right.
Like, what are we doing here?
No, man, I'm so glad that's kind of been quelled again. The Beanie Baby craze. Ugh.
Yeah.
But no, like whatever was cool in high school, that all those rich kids had, and all those kids that made fun of the dweeby kids, the D&D kids, and the ones that liked to read, and that liked music and all of that stuff. Those kids now, the ones that were the oppressors when we were in high school, are now the ones that have traded all of that stuff in for their commander deck of magic cards, and and a movie ticket to Superman. Like, I mean, it's so funny how all of that stuff has changed, and that now, but even then, that's different from how it was in the 80s. The 80s were...
every generation finds their thing. I mean, kids today now are going crazy on, well, I mean, a lot of it's for video games and whatnot, but I mean...
I think after the 90s, the video game thing started to grow, and it is going to do nothing but continue to grow.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry already, and it's still growing.
That's never going to go anywhere. But still, so Steve-O and Heroin Bob growing up were those dweeby, nerdy kids that, played D&D and listened to Rush, like...
You never would have guessed that from the first 2/3 of the movie. They don't even give you that scene until basically right at the very end of the movie. And then it starts to click, and you start to really feel these characters.
Except it didn't surprise me because it was me.
Yes,
Like,
I know
'cause,
exactly how you feel there. Yeah,
you
that's
know,
where this movie really starts to speak to its audience, and it doesn't care so much if it's speaking to everybody as long as it's speaking to somebody.
right. Well, like with Jake, when we're hanging out with Jake and Jake's talking about his new magic deck or whatever, and I tease him
Mhm.
about it. And, it's a lot of it is because like I was that dweeby nerdy kid with, hundreds or thousands of magic cards and, and decks built for all of them and everything. But then, there came a point where I was like, I'm done with that because I want to pursue fun, and I want to pursue girls, and I want to pursue, notoriety or whatever
Right.
it is. I mean, for everybody, it's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
that's where my drive came in, was that I wanted to be different from what I was. Ultimately, it's weird because like we had talked about, before we started recording, the whole nonconformity thing.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Just for the audience's benefit, I had said that I was a nonconformist, and I was such a nonconformist that I refused to conform with the nonconformists.
Yeah,
I
he was the South
reason,
Park joke.
I was the reason for the South Park joke. But I mean, so much of that was like it made me want to be somebody different, but at the same time, I didn't want to be the same as everybody else either. And so like, and that's kind of where the whole speaking to me part of this movie started, was the whole, these guys were different because they wanted to be different.
And I think that is a big part of it, though, is that they wanted to be different. Like they never wanted to fit in. They wanted to be something different. They wanted to be something novel.
Right.
I think that was a big. That's a big part of punk, is they don't want to seem like they're rehashing rockers. They're not trying to be, like the Mods was heavily influenced by the 1950s and whatnot.
Right.
Both in their music and their attire. They looked like 1950s mobsters in a way, but it was just that classic look.
Yeah. And they were modeling themselves after something,
Right.
but
they're desperate to fit into something, to belong to something.
yeah.
But the punks, they were trying to cut new ground. They wanted to fit in where they were. They didn't want to have to change or compromise something to fit in. They just wanted to be themselves and fit in.
Right.
But that's where the posers part comes up, is
yeah.
where's the genuineness there? What's genuine when if all you want to do is be an individual, okay, but how do you have a group of individuals? It's there's so many contradictions like that, and you can see Steve-O is struggling with it too, because he is an intellectual. He's very smart. He's easily able to look at the situation and
well, the fucker got into Harvard.
Yeah, at the very end, yeah, he gets, and with looking like he did, like
right.
got into Harvard.
Actually, that's kind of a perfect place to play the monologue clip.
Oh yeah, we should bring this in,
that I found, or that I put together here. So the premise of this scene is that Steve-O has just graduated high school. He has been accepted to Harvard, and his dad, who went to Harvard and is a lawyer, is trying to.
He was accepted, but he never applied.
Right. Oh no, that was later. He applied to Harvard before.
Oh,
but it was just
right out of high school,
just to prove his dad that he could.
Gotcha.
And just I mean, because there's a lot of metaphorical and real middle fingers that he does, kind of around this whole thing. But his dad is trying to talk to him about going to school and, needing to change his image a little bit so that he fits in more at Harvard and in New York and all of this other stuff so that he can further his career. And after he gets done telling him how he needs to change, he tells him, make sure that you be proud of who you are, and whatever you decide to be, be it with love.
Yeah.
And then
wasn't that the mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the mom added that in right there at the end. Yeah. But then after that whole speech, this was his response.
Oh, time out. I just want to ask real quick, if I can. You believe in rebellion, freedom, and love, right?
Absolutely.
Rebellion, freedom,
Yes.
love.
You two are divorced, so love failed. 2, Mom, you're a new age of clinging to any kind of scrap of Eastern religion that may justify why the above said love failed. 3, Dad, you're a slick corporate preppy-ass lawyer. I don't really have to say anything else about you, do I, Dad? 4, you moved from New York City, the mecca and hub of the cultural world, to Utah. Nowhere to change nothing, more to perpetuate this cycle of money, greed, fascism, and triviality. I mean, your movement of the people, by the people, and for the people got you nothing. You just hide behind some lost sense of drugs, sex, rock and roll. Oh, kumbaya. I am the future. I am the future of this great nation which you, Father, so arrogantly saved this world for. Look, I have my own agenda. Harvard, out. University, Utah, in. I'm gonna get a 4.0 in damage. I love you guys. Don't get me wrong. It's all about this. But for the first time in my life, I'm 18 and I can say, fuck you!
Yeah. Oh man, that scene. Oh, that is every like 19-year-old's like 18-year-old, 19-year-old. As soon as you're old enough to be a age of majority in whatever state you live in, that is what so many people want to say to their parents, even if they have good parents. Like I had 2 great parents. My parents are still together.
Yeah, see, and I don't know, like I didn't really go through any of that, like the wanting to throw the fingers up at the parents thing. I mean, in a way, I sort of did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was unintentional. I didn't really harbor any ill feelings to my parents for much of anything really at the time.
Me neither, but that's not about.
But it was like, for me, it was just decisions that I made in disrespecting the things that they had given me over the course of my life. You know, like, you know, the ability to think critically and make good decisions and things like that. And by not doing that for a number of years was kind of a couple of big, middle fingers. Yeah. So
right, yeah.
Like, I get it, but at the same time, like his whole monologue here is he turns it political.
Yeah,
really.
Definitely. Well, his dad kind of makes it political too when he's like, oh, well, you know, when I was in college, we did this rebellion thing too.
Oh, yeah.
We went to Woodstock
yeah.
and we collectively, we ended that damn war in Nam.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Go have another drink in the clubhouse, Shooter McGavin.
Right? Yeah. Oh my God. In case anybody, yeah, his dad is the same actor that plays Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore, and I couldn't stop laughing the moment I saw him because I still think, you know, wait, you eat shit for breakfast?
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Oh man. Well, and that actor, I don't know his name, but man, he does such a good jackass so well. I mean, obviously Happy Gilmore, but then in this movie too, he plays Steve-O's dad, and there's only a handful of scenes that you see him in, but obviously that scene, and then there's one other where his dad gets Steve-O into Harvard. Well, his dad puts in a application for Harvard for Steve-O and is trying to talk him into taking it, you know. As he points out, one of the best contradictions is, Dad, you're a Jew and you're driving a Porsche.
Yo, right, that you bought at a Volkswagen dealership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad, Volkswagen.
For the people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's good stuff. I don't know. Chris McDonald,
mm-hmm.
He does good in anything he does.
Yeah, and he can play a good bad guy so well that you almost want to punch him on the face, or
but
like
not
in the street.
Too serious a bad guy.
Yeah,
like
he plays a dopey bad guy, like a really like a cartoon character.
You know, I think the vast majority of his roles could really be considered the perfect description for when anybody says that is a douche.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, the Christopher McDonald's characters in just about anything.
Yeah, which is a shame because I bet the guy is a really awesome guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, a guy who does that in a movie and like makes himself as much of an idiot as he does in the ones that he does.
Yeah, he must have. Yeah, he's got to be very secure with himself and just like, yeah.
So we were talking earlier about how when they were kids, you had one that was really straight laced and one that was not quite as much and everything like that. Well, it's funny because that duality continues when they become adults. Now, I think that the roles somewhat change a little bit, in that duality, but it's still there. Like,
yeah, definitely. As kids, you kind of see that Steve-O was more the follower, and it was Bob that was the leader. But all throughout the movie, it's pretty much the other way around. It feels like Steve-O is the main character, the leader,
right.
And Bob follows Steve-O around. But yeah, it's very interesting to find out that that's not how that dynamic always was.
Well, that and it's almost like they split duties. Because, like, Steve-O does drugs, Bob doesn't.
Yeah.
That's the whole ironic thing about it is that he's called Heroin Bob, but he doesn't do drugs. He's never done drugs.
Yeah,
all he does is
the most
drink beer.
straight-laced.
Yeah. And so Steve-O does drugs, Bob doesn't. Steve-O lets people be with their decisions. Like, he doesn't care. Why? Because that is the face of punk is you do whatever the fuck you want as long as it doesn't mess with me. Now,
but even if it does, that's still kind of punk.
Right, and then Bob is a bit preachy.
Oh yeah. There's a whole scene where he's just preaching on him while Steve-O is, high as a kite.
Yeah, Steve-O's high as shit and Bob is standing over him like, like some kind of a, dad shoving his finger down his kid's throat for, breaking the neighbor's window or something.
Yeah.
And he's all that shit'll fuck you up, man, and all of that. And it's like,
it definitely does have dad energy when he's talking down to him. I love that scene though too, because I
think that's the cinematography in it is,
yeah.
They did a really good job of that high and mighty thing by putting the camera super low and him looking straight down at it,
Yeah.
But anyway, what does Steve-O say about it? He says Bob was like that, a real asshole when it came to reading into things. It's a real good description because he is just kind of an asshole by harshing everybody's mellow.
Yeah, always talking down. Yeah.
So
he's very preachy.
But that duality being there, and maybe changing a little bit. Now, what do we know about dualities though? If that one is always two, despite their differences, they're always two halves of the same whole. That kind of brings us towards a conversation that kind of drops right to the end of the movie. I have it in my show notes here as the death of Heroin Bob, which, first off, let's just say that sounds like a really great ballad.
Yeah,
or
I would
an
totally
epic poem. But the death of Heroin Bob, that whole duality thing, like thinking about how they were two halves of the same whole for so long and so much of their lives, it kind of put that scene into a different perspective for me.
Yeah.
Like when he wakes up and he goes and kicks Bob and he's like, Bob, it's 3 o'clock. We need to go get something to eat,
right.
And his eyes are just black. And, he looks down and he sees him and he's just, and you can see that look of disbelief. Like there's no way that this is happening right now. Cause
or he's not, he even says it. I'm not ready for this. And,
right. Yeah. He says, like, he goes into the punk thing immediately and he's like, only posers die, you fucking poser, like, and he
but
gets
then that
mad
snaps and it's like he goes through all of the stages of grief in about 12 to 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Because instantly he goes from calling him a poser in the anger into bargaining. He's trying to I'm sorry, please wake up. Oh my god, dude, that scene is so well done and so heartbreaking.
Yes, Matthew Lillard made a career off of that scene.
Yeah, his reaction to that scene, man.
Yeah,
oof. I think he's still feeling that.
It's actually kind of sad. Matthew Lillard went from a movie that ended with a scene like that to Scooby-Doo.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm not hating on Scooby-Doo, except that it was Scooby-Doo. Come on. But like the death of Heroin Bob, that scene tore me up.
Absolutely. Oh my
and it
God.
does every
Matthew
time.
Lillard falls apart. Yeah. That was one thing too. Is like, I remember being destroyed by that the first time I saw it as a kid. I wasn't ready. Like, I felt exactly like he was. I wasn't ready for that scene. I did not expect to see a character die in this. At
Right.
least not this far. It feels out of place in the movie from like a technical point of view, because it's well past the apex point of the movie. It's
Right.
only like 7 minutes from the end or something. It's very close to the end. It's basically the funeral. He meets with, Trish for a second. And
Mhm.
I don't even think he says anything to Trish hardly at the funeral, and then it just cuts back to a monologue about him growing up. He goes back to Harvard, or he goes to Harvard and graduates, and it's all being told, as though it's already happened from that point on. It's, it just feels out of place to leave to have an apex of a movie, or like a climax of the movie that close to the end.
Except that there really wasn't much of an apex in this movie. About
Yeah,
the closest
it kinda
thing
is
you
just-
had, the closest thing you had to an apex was when he went to his dad's. When
Yeah.
Heroin Bob went to his dad's house, because that was the first time that you knew anything about his dad besides that his dad was a drinker.
Right.
And
Yep.
then, like Steve-O didn't know anything about his dad. They'd been friends their whole lives,
Yeah,
and he didn't
that
know
surprised
anything
me
about his
too.
dad.
Like, that almost makes Steve-O sound like kind of a douche. Like I mean, how is it that you've known this guy seriously for 20 some years?
Do you remember those kids from high school though? Like those kids that you went to school with that like you never went to their house.
Yeah.
There are kids that grow up in homes that they're like, I don't want anybody to see this. I don't want anybody
yeah.
to see my family. I
You're
don't want
absolutely right.
anybody to know where I come from. And that's where you typically get these kids with extreme personalities is they make the world their playground because they don't have one at home, And so like Heroin Bob going back to say hi to his dad and tell him that, he's done all of these things and, and that he's good and that they named a disease after him and all of that other stuff.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
All of
In
these
the
things.
beginning
He's
of the movie.
going back and talking to his dad and his dad is just Gandhi. Like he is somewhere on some
There's
other
not even
planet.
not even one bit of recognition. He instantly goes into the the tinfoil hat zone and thinks that his son and Steve-O are FBI or
agents.
CIA agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, CIA. Yeah. Well, now you've made him yeah. Oh man, I have so much sympathy for that guy too, because he definitely needs some medical help. Like, he's not in a good place.
No, not at all.
Well, you never hear anything about Heroin Bob's mom.
Right.
I don't think you ever hear even a mention of her. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that she must have either left or died very young in Bob's life. So it's presumed that, I mean, the dad was trying to raise Bob by himself while losing his own mind. So I mean, he was probably stricken by grief and all of that. Like,
Right.
that's not easy, but I mean,
He came into a world with that. Like, I mean, from that as a home.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's no way that he wanted Steve-O to see that.
No,
So
you're absolutely
I mean,
right.
my best friend knowing that this is me.
Yeah, that conversation he has later with Steve-O about it, is like, do you think I let down my dad? And Steve-O's just like, what? No, of course not, dude. Like, how would you even think of that? Like, if anything, your dad has let you down.
Right.
Where's he been in your life? Like,
Right.
Steve-O, very logical right there. I mean, he's completely honest.
Yeah.
It's rough on both of them, but it is that duality. They're almost the same character. It's almost like you're seeing one character split in half, told through two actors.
Right.
And symbolically, the Heroin Bob side of Steve-O dies, and so the punk is dead so that he can go on and grow up, I guess. I mean,
That is a very astute observation about that duality.
yeah,
Heroin-
you brought up the duality. It just finally clicked on me, is that it really is like it's one character being played with two actors.
The punk in Steve-O is gone.
Is symbolically dead as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's when he cuts his hair and moves
Yeah,
moves to Harvard and gets his degree and then starts being a pain in the ass in a judge's courtroom and continues being a punk in that way, I guess. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's.
I think he also realizes that punk is more about who you are than what you do or what you know, well, maybe I'm putting words into their mouths now because it's not for me to define what is punk, but in a way, yeah, I kind of think that that's what's going on there is he doesn't need punk as a crutch anymore. He knows who he is, and
Right.
it's no longer necessary.
So now we get to
So he's a poser.
now we get to the fun part of the show, and that's the active ingredient. And this is where we talk about how the movie changed us, moved us, how it was medicinal, that kind of thing. So was this movie medicinal for you? Did it change you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this movie in a couple of ways because I feel like the first couple times when I watched it when it was newer, you know, well, I didn't watch this when it first came out. I don't think I watched this until like shortly after I had graduated high school. I want to say like 2006.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely this movie spoke to me, but it was always the first half of the movie. First, you know, it was like, oh, this is how parties go. Oh, okay, I get it. This is what I'm supposed to, you know, I was trying to emulate the movie to feel like I fit in with that culture. And it's kind of ironic because that's literally one of the main aspects of this movie is you can't just fake this. You can't be a poser and expect to find a family, you know, a tribe.
Right.
But yeah, watching it later on now, it speaks to me in a different way. It's a different type of mess, and it kind of reminds me that we're all growing up and that we aren't on just this one path in life. You know, there's always going to be something else that you need to be working on, and you know, we keep trying to figure out, you know, nobody has this one game plan that's going to be, you know, what you're going to be doing 40 years from now, because 2 years from now, something's going to come up and throw all that against a wall.
Right.
Hopefully not, but you know, I mean, like
it's going to happen.
Life doesn't go according to your plans, you know?
Right. See, and for me, it's kind of all the same way. I mean, it watching it again for the first time in a long time really kind of just brought it back for me. But like I had said earlier, I was the nonconformist to the nonconformists. Like I wanted everything to do with everything that wasn't what everybody was.
That's
that
very well
sense.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very big way of saying that. Yeah. You didn't want to be doing what everybody else was doing
in the biggest way possible. And like, I spent so much time. I mean, we're talking like major life decisions.
Yeah.
Were made for the sake of not being what everybody expected. And I mean, I dropped out of high school, and I didn't go to get my GED until well after. When you go to a day of school and you see yourself in 5 different classes with educational curriculum, and you don't learn anything in any of those 5 classes.
Yeah.
Not only do you not learn anything, but you also know more beyond the things that they're teaching. It gets really frustrating. And,
for sure.
And so, you know, like, instead of like being proactive or intelligent about it and saying, hey, you know, I'm not being challenged and I'd really like to learn something instead of just come and go through the paces. But instead of doing that, I go, I'm just not going to go to school, and I'm just going to lay on the couch and sleep all day or whatever, you know, I mean, just one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, making all of those kind of decisions based on just not wanting to be a part of the herd. I did that for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I watched this movie
that you almost realize how destructive that really is for yourself.
Right. Like, I mean, you think that what you're doing is making a statement. The problem is that when you get to be an adult, nobody could give a shit less about your statement. And so
we've got more shit to deal with in our own lives. Like, we don't give a fuck if somebody's got mohawk hair.
Right.
Whatever. Change my tire. Like,
so
sorry, that's mean.
So, I mean, while these guys are doing it with punk, and I was doing it from a different perspective, you know, culturally, I still didn't realize just how much I was hamstringing myself by being this ultra nonconformist. And it also taught me a little bit about how you can continue to be a nonconformist while being a productive member of society.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to do, well, I'm a homeowner now. What am I going to do with my home? Oh, yeah, thank you. But what am I going to do with my home? Well, I was just talking with Jen last week, maybe the week before, and the front of the house could use a few things, like, some things to go over the windows, just to kind of give it a little bit of texture. And
yeah,
because the front of my house looks like a cliff face.
Right.
Like, I mean, it just drops straight down to the ground for 2 stories, 2 really big stories. And
right. It's a big flat wall from the front.
Right. So I'm sitting here going, well, how can we give that a little bit more personality? So I thought about it, and I asked Jen, I was like, so how would you feel about turning the front of the house into a storefront from Diagon Alley?
Oh, that's cool.
Like, and she, well, how would you do that? Well, I don't know, but we could research it and we could make it happen. It's just a matter of, saving up for whatever we need to and blah, 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 yada, yada, all that other stuff. And then it just happens, and she's like, you'd be willing to do that? And it's like, why the hell not? Like, why, dude, I did not sign any paperwork for any kind of a fucking, what is that? A neighborhood?
Yeah. HOA.
Yeah, homeowners,
I hate those
associations. I didn't sign any paperwork for any of that shit.
Most of those
if they have a problem with me making my house look like a fucking Harry Potter store, then they can just cram it right up their ass. And you know what? Right. That is punk. That is non-conforming. Yes. I can still be productive. I can still be a participating member of my community, and I can have fun with my house the way that I fucking want to. So, and
God bless America.
Gotta love America. But yeah, so I mean, that was kind of a big turning point for me, where I decided, you know what, I am going to go and I'm going to get my GED. And I worked my ass off, and I have college credits at any rate. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and call it now. And thank you, Terry, for hopping on with me. It's kind of cool getting somebody that's got actually a pretty similar life experience as I do.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Being the same age and all of that stuff, it's kind of cool. Being able to, we went to the same high school at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy though, but I don't remember you from, no offense, but I mean, we both know this. We didn't really become friends until after high school. And the entire time, I don't even think I saw you in the hallway.
Oh, I saw you plenty of times in the hallway, of course.
Well, yeah, but it's not hard to miss me. I was in a wheelchair for like a year, and then true. I was on crutches. Like,
right.
I was easy to spot.
That was kind of always my role in high school. I knew who everybody else was, but nobody knew who I was.
Yeah, that is so true.
But yeah,
I found that out about you later, because a handful of people knew you, but it was like this ghost of Ben, this mysterious figure.
The mysterious Ben. Yeah.
Yes. Little did we know he was working on his doctorate.
Right. I have to be careful with that, because I'm afraid that someday somebody's going to come after me like they do, like Dr. Oz and all of those guys.
Yeah,
like, you're not a real doctor.
See, that's why I like that you make fun of it every single episode. I actually look forward to that every episode to see what you're going to do with it. This one was, I appreciated that one.
Good.
I'm still trying to figure out if you have like a random, an AI that's generating this stuff for you, or if you're just like figuring this out as we record.
I just do it while I'm driving.
Oh, nice.
When I'm driving to work or driving home, I'll think about it.
Free time brain.
Because windshield time is a really good time to be thinking about podcast stuff.
Oh, for sure. It's a great time to be listening to them too.
Yeah. So
wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Drive safe out there.
Yeah. At any rate, thanks again, Terry, and we'll hope to see you again. Probably in another episode. I've got a few that I've got you marked down for. So
I'm really excited for what's coming. I can't wait.
Awesome. Now, if you have an idea for a movie, or if you would like to challenge me to find a therapeutic purpose to a movie, or even if you'd like to be on an episode, send an email to contact@movie-rx.com, or you can call or text 402-519-5790. Thank you all for listening, and remember, this movie is not intended to treat, cure, or prevent any disease. and it is not to be taken orally. We'll see you at the next appointment.